Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Welcome back to Films and Stuff. I'm Ethan. I'm here with Pete. We're back for another action-packed episode.
How are you this week?
We're all good. This is our weekly stream or skip, but I think we should call it Stream or Skip Plus this week because we've got a lot to review.
That's exactly right. So again, the premise is Ethan has given me a list of TV shows and movies he'd like me to watch. I have done the same for him. These are not normally shows that we would watch on our own accord. And the idea is that we watch 2+ episodes of the show and determine whether it's a show that's worth investing our time, i.e. streaming it, or if there's not worth our time, i.e. skipping it.
That's right. Shall I kick it off with my assignment?
Please do.
My assignment, available on Apple TV Plus, is Shantaram, starring Charlie Hunnam. You know this guy, right?
Charlie Hunnam, right?
Yeah. He was in King Arthur, right?
Also the lead in the first Pacific Rim movie, for those of you who don't remember the name.
We've also seen him in a bunch of stuff. Like, he's also got these very good, like, supporting roles. Like, he was in Triple Frontier. Yeah, The Gentleman. So, I mean, we've seen him in a bunch of stuff, but he is, The Lost City of Z, Sons of Anarchy, right? We've seen him in a bunch of stuff. It is one season. Not sure if it's been renewed. It has won a few awards, and I thought it was exceptional. Let me give you a summary of what the story is about. The gentleman, his name in the series is Lynn, L-I-N, Ford. And we find out that he is kind of a ne'er-to-do-well son of a highly respected professor. He comes from a very good family, but he's never been particularly motivated or disciplined. He's always just kind of been, a little bit aloof, taking life, as it comes, into kind of like some drugs, petty crime, kind of stuff like this. He actually is arrested for a crime in which he actually was not responsible for, let's say. He breaks out of prison and assumes an identity, and he decides to go to India because he believes that because of the large population, the general chaos and so forth, that he'll be able to blend in and will not be able to be tracked down. And then it just kind of shows his adventures within India. He becomes kind of well respected in a village. He kind of turns his life around, becomes a little bit more responsible. There are some expats, not just Indians, in the community that he's a part of. And it kind of just shows all the little drama between all these people. There's obviously, everyone's got their own little side hustles. Some of them are legal, some of them are not particularly legal. And it just shows how Lynn is trying to navigate all of that, while at the same time trying to keep his identity, or his real identity, and his background concealed. It is, I think, really, really a cool show. It's quite compelling, and it's got like a positive moral compass to it, I have to say. Like, he genuinely plays a good guy who cares about the people in the village or the community that he's kind of adopted for himself. All the different characters around him are pretty compelling. And I have to say, like, I finished the whole first season. I absolutely loved it, and I recommend it as a must subscribe. Oh,
wow. Okay. Let me just ask, this setting in terms of timeline, present day, or is in the past or future, or what?
It's present day. It's mostly I think they're in Mumbai. And It is, I mean, India quite well. I mean, it's alternatively set up in kind of like a slum shantytown kind of setting, where a lot of dialogue takes in place, kind of inside little huts or housing. Alternatively, there's times when he's picked up by, like a big black SUV and taken to kind of like a wealthy gated community. And, he's sitting inside someone's, house or on their porch or patio or something. But it's definitely modern time, but it's a little bit of a timeless show. There's not a lot of use of email, mobile phones, technology. So I think that makes this a little bit more plausible to watch in the future, where you're not going to see someone using, an iPhone and that would date the story. You're not seeing anyone use, like sophisticated technology that would be dated in a couple of years. So it's pretty timeless, but the implication is that it's set in the modern day. So Charlie Hunnam gives, I think, a really, really good performance. I mean, he's a very likable guy. He plays kind of a salt of the earth, very humble guy. And obviously, his conviction for this crime that he was involved in, his subsequent, getaway, it's really kind of humbled him. And he's kind of, given up the idea of no more, partying, no more like, just, living for myself. Like, I'm just going to be a member of the community. I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to help people where I can. It's kind of like his internal penance, for his past lifestyle. It's not intended to be like an uplifting chicken soup for the soul kind of story. There's plenty of shenanigans, between him and his friends to go around. But I mean, the idea that he's, just willing to kind of like put his head down and contribute, whatever he has to offer to this village, I think is like quite endearing. And this is, we've talked about this in the past as well. Like what Apple TV Plus has been doing is a lot of the shows that we've seen recently, or a lot of the shows that Apple TV is known for, they've all kind of been in this, the genres have been much different, but the elements have been similar in the sense that they're all kind of set in the present day, but that present day could be 5 years ago or it could be 10 years from now, right? They're very difficult to kind of date. They're also in very inexpensive kind of locations. They're all like we saw was it Blackbird?
Yes, it was Blackbird.
Right, Blackbird, where the setting was a prison, right?
Yep.
So I mean,
exactly.
that could have been, even though that's a kind of a historical story, that could have been set kind of at any time. Yeah. And the setting wasn't like ultra expensive, to create, a prison backdrop. And we saw that with a lot of the Tom Hanks movies as well. I mean, those are now probably 2 years old, but again, we've seen that, I think, with Apple TV Plus, that they've been very, very careful in choosing stories and in choosing settings that have a wide audience appeal. They're not just focused on kind of, these niche sci-fi types of characters. They're not focused on, like too much, like intricate spy thrillerness. They've kind of chosen things that I think would appeal to a wide audience. In fact, my dad watched Shantaram, and even before you assigned this to me, I think I told you, he noted that he really liked it. And I thought that was a little bit unusual because it doesn't really seem to fit his genre. He's a much more Star Trekian, kind of, TV watcher. So the fact that he liked this show, I think, just goes to the broad appeal that, Apple TV Plus is trying to get to without having super, super expensive, production value or production cost.
I would also argue that that's probably a point in Apple TV's favor, and to a lesser extent Netflix's favor, because our parents are of a generation that their idea of TV viewing is probably more attuned to old school broadcast channels. Yeah. And the fact that your dad has come to you to say, I was on Apple TV and I watched Shantaram and I liked it, is impressive, right? I mean, my mom has come to me to say like, oh, I love murder mystery movies and I saw this on Netflix and I loved it. And I think you might like it too. That's a relatively new phenomenon for me. To have my parents come back to me
make recommendations
and make the recommendation. I don't think that even 10 years ago, that was not a thing.
Tell them to get their own podcast.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right about that. It is kind of a cool development that you can see these, these things are so multi-generational, right? In terms of their appeal. 100%. But I give Apple a lot of credit for this, to green light a show like this to make sure that it's produced in a way that, I mean, this is about an Australian chap, right? A blonde surfer dude looking guy, with a story that takes place primarily, in India, with majority of Indian characters. He does have a small expat group around him. There's at least one American. There's one, I know the actress is French. I'm not sure where she's from in the show itself. So, I mean, there is a little bit of an international community around him, but primarily it is a story set in India about an Australian chap. And I have to say, it has a very, very broad appeal. But for me, it's extraordinarily compelling. I really like it because, like I said, it's not really intended to be uplifting. But when this show is over, I'm not in a bad mood. And you and I have both watched shows where where it's a great story, compelling entertainment, but the character is so off-putting that, or the story is so off-putting that when you're done with that episode, you're the opposite of the mentality that you want to be. You are angry, you are upset, you are frustrated, you are something bad. And that's the opposite of, I think, why we should be watching things. We should be watching things so that when we're done and it's time to move on with our day, our evening, we have a smile on our face, or we have something kind of warm inside of our soul saying, oh, that was good,
Yeah.
And it gives you, this positive feeling. There's nothing worse than, for me, than being obsessed with a show because I love the story, but when I'm done with it, it gives me a very, very repugnant feeling, right?
Yeah. No, I'm with you. And I mean, look, we all want shows and movies to make you feel something, but I think your preference and my preference in general is that something should either feel optimistic or positive in some way and not kind of grossed out. I think the best example I can think of in recent years has been The Handmaid's Tale, which, especially the last season, I gave up on it. I stopped watching it because it was just like I got depressed and I was sick, and it didn't feel like the character was moving forward. It was just mired in its own like gross outedness, and I was just like, all right, I'm out. I'm totally out.
Could not be. I think that's a great example for an amazing show that I really love thinking about and talking about. I feel the exact same way, that watching it was just really giving me stress that I didn't need to be self-inflicting on myself.
Yeah.
So that is Shantaram, Apple TV Plus. Highly, highly recommend it. I give it a must subscribe. I think it appeals to almost everybody. I'd be surprised if there's a lot of people who said they dislike this show. Maybe not everyone is as passionate about it as I am, but I think it would be hard. I'd be hard pressed to find someone who's like, no, that show is absolutely miserable. I think it's got a very wide amount of appeal. So Shantaram, Apple TV Plus, everyone.
Okay. Well, I'll put it on my list.
Put it on the list.
In the meantime, I had Amazon Prime's most recent original, Daisy Jones and the Six.
What is this?
So,
is this a band? I thought there was like a Davy Jones.
Yeah, there is Davy Jones's Locker, right? He's a famous pirate or nautical figure.
Okay.
When I first heard this, and this probably goes to the state of mind that I'm in versus also the state of the industry. When I heard this, my instant reaction was some kind of either superhero or mystery solving thing. Like, do you remember when we were very young, there was the Fantastic Four or Fantastic Five and the Secret Seven and all these kinds of like young adult books?
Yes.
That's where my mind went. But this is completely different. Daisy Jones and the Six is the name of a band inside this universe. The premise of the show is that it is presented as a mockumentary. Now, when I say mockumentary, we normally tend to think of, this is Spinal Tap. That, where they are taking a documentary series. That's basically a parody. This isn't that. When I say mockumentary in this case, I mean basically it's a fictional documentary And the way
Okay.
it's shown is that it's showcased as a series of interviews with the
Okay.
band in the present day, with flashbacks of the story set back in the 70s when the show is actually set.
Oh, okay, hold on. Is Daisy Jones and the Six a real band in real life?
It is not.
Okay. And Daisy Jones is a man or a lady?
Daisy Jones is a singer. She is a young woman. And the
Okay.
Six is the band. So let's take a step back. So the present day in the show is set in 1997.
Okay.
And the series of interviews with a band who broke up under very mysterious circumstances in 1977.
Oh.
They never explained why they broke up. The band went completely radio silent, pun intended.
Oh.
And all of a sudden, they have these series of interviews because they've decided now is the time for them to share with the world what happened and why they broke up.
Oh, man.
The first 2 episodes basically introduce each band member back in the early 70s, late 60s, when each of them was getting their start and how they all met each other.
Okay.
Yeah. And so my understanding is that this show is a mini series. So I think it's just the 8 or 10 episodes and then we're done.
Okay.
And so the first 2 or 3 episodes is about how the band knew each other and how they got together. I imagine the next 4 or 5 episodes are going to be about the successes of the band and, how they made it big. And then, some form of resolution will be had. As you can probably discern, I only watched the 2 episodes. And I'll get to why.
I just want to say the reason I asked why Daisy Jones is a man or a lady is that when you look at the cover art for the show, right? What I see is I see the dude with the aviator shades, and it seems like he's kind of holding the hand of a girl behind him, right? And they're kind of like in a crowd of people. So I didn't know if like the dude was Davy Jones and that was his girlfriend, or if it was like a bodyguard situation.
Right,
Okay,
right.
I got it.
So in this case, in that poster that you're looking at, he is the guy who actually founded the band. He's the head of the Six.
Got it.
And she's Daisy Jones.
Got it.
The understanding I have, after the second episode, is basically the Six got created. They were missing that special oomph, that special X factor to take them to the next level.
It's like No Doubt.
And I haven't seen it yet, but I assume Daisy Jones joins the band as
Makes
that
sense.
X factor that takes them to the next level.
It's absolutely Gwen Stefani and No Doubt, right?
I don't remember that story, to be honest.
That may be because I'm making it up, but I thought it kind of happened the same way.
Sure. Listeners, let us know, any No Doubt fans. In any case, the cast is incredibly young. I think most of them you and I will not even know or even recognize, to be honest. They're all very handsome. They're all very beautiful. And they all seem to be very good. Like they come off as authentic. Again, I don't know any of them. That doesn't mean that they're no ones. I just haven't heard of them. I do, however, expect big things from this cast because I genuinely think they were excellent at their roles.
All right.
In terms of the setup of the story and the premise, the first episode is exclusively a look back at the history of the band. And of course, because it's a rock story set in the 70s, it's got some of the stereotypical elements in it. So there's drugs, sex, rock and roll lifestyle, about each member in their formative years. I have to say, and I never really make this comment because it's not something I ever focus on, but the soundtrack, phenomenal.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the soundtrack is really good. And
that's cool.
I haven't followed up on this, but I checked on Amazon X-Ray. I believe that the actors in the show actually created some of the songs for the soundtrack.
There is nothing better. There is nothing better than like an original soundtrack for a show where it's not just like repurposed music, right? Yeah. That's super cool.
I was so impressed with that because I assume there's no lip syncing or dubbing going on. The band sounds excellent. I was very impressed with that. And I saw, on the Amazon X-Ray when they show you the names of the songs also coming up, a couple of them were actually executed by Daisy Jones and the Six. So I was quite pleased with that.
This is an Amazon Prime original, right?
Yes, it is.
This is exactly what Amazon should be doing.
Yes. I totally agree. This is the kind of programming and the kind of content that Amazon should be doing. Very small stakes, very high quality. The production values are phenomenal. Like you genuinely feel like you're in California in the 70s and 60s and 70s. It feels very authentic. It looks very authentic. And I mean, with all due respect to Hollywood, it doesn't look expensive to make. All of this stuff didn't look phenomenally expensive. And so if you're into the music scene and into that kind of culture, this is going to be right up your alley. I call this a mooch, but only because music related shows do next to nothing for me. It's just not my genre or wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Having said that, if you told me, hey, Pete, what's wrong with this show? Like, what are the bad things? What are the plot holes? Honestly, I can't find any. I couldn't point out any faults with the show, with the performances, with anything. So it's not on the show. Like, it's a mooch for me, not because the show is boring or because, it's bad. It's because it's just not my wheelhouse.
Okay.
I expect that for a lot of people, this is going to be at worst a mooch like it is for me. But I suspect that if you're even 10% more into the music culture than I am, it will be a must subscribe for you.
I love that this is from Amazon Prime, and I really wish that Amazon would do more like this. That's leading into a segue that we'll have in a future episode, but I absolutely think that Amazon is missing enough original content that is, fresh intellectual property that they're creating. I don't think, and I have to say, this show itself is exactly what streamer skip should be for, which is the cover art to me is not, it's okay, but the title Davy Jones and the Six doesn't mean anything, because even like you said at the very outset, is this about like a detective gang? Is it about superheroes? Is it about gangsters or mobsters? Like, I feel like it could be a little bit of a better title to give us a little bit of a hint about what it is. But in any case, I'm super happy that you reviewed it, and it seems like something I would definitely watch, at the least for just kind of like, background entertainment when I'm doing something else.
Totally. And I'm with you in the sense that, and again, this is going to sound worse than I mean it to, but actually I think this is the positive for Amazon. It's as inoffensive a show as you could produce as an exclusive.
Yeah.
And so again, I know that doesn't sound like a glowing recommendation, but given let's say, the swings that Amazon has made in the last 18 months, in baseball terms, this is a single. It's a double. They didn't go for the home run. They didn't make any crazy risks. I don't imagine this was a very expensive program to make. They probably spent more on the music rights for its soundtrack than they did for anything else. You've got a very young cast that's relatively unknown. And again, my benchmark is that if Ethan and I don't know anyone in this show, then it's relatively safe for us to be able to say these are relatively new people in the industry.
Yeah, when I'm looking at IMDb on the names, none of the names jump out at me. But when I click on each actor directly, I recognize a lot of the stuff that they've been in.
Yes.
Like Daisy Jones has been in The Terminal List, which is also on Amazon Prime. Mad Max Fury Road. It said that she was in Logan Lucky. It said that she was in American Honey, all of which you and I have seen. She looks kind of familiar, but I don't have another character that I could specifically say I know her from this.
Exactly. So I ran through the same exercise that you're doing now. I went on to IMDb. I went on to Wikipedia. I clicked on every one of the 6 plus Daisy Jones to see where I had seen them before, if I had seen them before. And like you rightly said, I recognize a lot of their past credits, but I do not remember any of their characters.
The one dude I do know is Sam Claflin. He plays Billy in Daisy Jones.
Yeah, so that's the leader of the band.
He's Finnick in the Hunger Games.
Yep.
Remember Me Before You?
I don't.
Oh, man. If you need a good cry, I mean, this movie, I think, dehydrated me. It's Amelia Clarke, you want me to give you the synopsis quick on a tangent?
Please.
It is a tearjerker. Emilia Clarke played it right after she hit it big with Game of Thrones. She obviously was trying to go in a different direction, so she's got kind of her natural color hair. So Sam Claflin plays this super cool dude who's got like this perfect life. Like he's a very nice guy and he comes from a very wealthy family. You know, he's got this big luxury apartment and he's motorcycle riding. Like he's just kind of like that perfect dude that we all wish our life could be, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's involved in an accident and paralyzed. His fiance leaves him and his mom hires Daenerys, Emilia Clarke, to be kind of like the care worker. You know what I'm saying? Right?
Yeah.
Like to come and like change his diaper and like bathe him and stuff, right? So he's like in a terrible mood. Like he hasn't shaved. He's like very, very bitter and angry, as would be expected if you were paralyzed, right? And things start off as really rough, but then like she wins him over. And at the end, oh my God, it may cry on air. They get married. I mean, seriously, have 2 liters of water before you watch this. You will absolutely just dehydrate yourself crying. It is exceptional by both of them. But it is just, and you should probably watch it by yourself. Don't watch it with anyone else.
Okay.
So yeah, I remember him. So he was Finnick in Hunger Games, and he was Will in Me Before You. That's the only other guy that I recognize. Sorry, tangent.
No, that's fine. That's exactly right. But the point is that I think that most people will know the casts, the movies they've been in, but they won't know the cast members directly.
Right.
Which leads me to believe that they were probably either extras or very minor characters, which again leads me to say, hey, look, this is a very young cast, inexperienced in the sense that they've been in a few movies, but they haven't been leads before now.
Right.
And again, because they're so good in this, and I do mean that, I wouldn't be surprised if 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of them take breakout roles in other movies or shows.
That's exciting to watch.
Yeah. So again, Amazon Prime, good for you. This is the kind of thing you should be doing. It's a mooch only because music isn't my thing.
Yeah.
Having said that, if you are 10% more than me into music, or if you just need a show in the background that's got a good soundtrack and a relatively good story and a mystery, because I still don't know why the band broke up, this could be the one for you.
Take note, Amazon Prime. Take note. So we had some good streaming platforms to check from this week, right? Apple TV Plus, Shantaram, Amazon for Daisy Jones and the Six.
Yeah.
But that's not all.
Here comes the plus segment of our Stream or Skip Plus this week. Here
comes the plus. You want to break it down?
Funnily enough, a couple weeks ago, I saw the trailer for what we're about to talk about, and I actually put it on your Stream or Skip list.
I think you did. You did.
3 days ago, you messaged me all hot and bothered.
Hot and bothered. Yeah.
Stop anything you're doing. It doesn't matter if you're in the middle of heart surgery. Put down that scalpel, turn on Netflix, and watch The Diplomat.
Which was good television advice, bad advice if you were a surgeon.
So I put down my scalpel, I scrubbed up, and I turned on Netflix.
So this is a new
you.
series. Yeah, kudos to me. I mean, you did put it on my list, and I did see it on the list, and maybe that gave me subconsciously the idea to take a look, but I think I've seen it pop up either on my IMDb with the trailer, or it may have popped up on my Netflix itself. But it's called The Diplomat. It's an original series on Netflix. Stars Kerry Russell, who we've known for years and years and years, right? Rufus Sewell.
Yeah.
Do you know who this dude is?
Yeah, we just saw him in Kaleidoscope.
That's right. Can I break it down? Like
Please.
The summary of this. So the summary is, in a very House of Cardsian element, Kerry Russell plays an American, and she is assigned to be the US ambassador in London. And let me stop there. and you tell me if I'm wrong, I think this is brilliant for two reasons. One, the world does not need another White House show. We've already had The West Wing, irreplaceable. We've already had House of Cards, which was amazing at the time. Obviously, some Kevin Spacey issues precluded that from continuing. And I think that with the very, very sensitive political climate that we live in now, it's really hard to do another White House-based drama. I think you'll just divide people even further. So the idea to create a show about an ambassador, I think, is a great way to bring a political series without actually focusing on kind of partisan politics in the US. The second reason I think this is brilliant is that it's American, but it's based in the UK, which basically kind of, first of all, it gives you a larger talent pool of actors to draw from because British people can use their British accent. And secondly, in theory, for audiences, both American audiences and UK audiences should be engaged in this. It's not really intended to kind of like choose one or the other.
I totally agree with you. And I think in a masterstroke, even though it's about an American diplomat and the American ambassador, it's not really about American politics. It's about international politics and America's place in it. But it's not a red versus blue or, you know, a right-wing state versus a left-wing state issue. You see hints of that, but it's really much more about, on the British side, it's not really even about the Labour Party versus the Tory Party. They're just saying, hey, by the way, the Tories are in power. This guy who's the prime minister is a loose approximation of Boris Johnson. The American president and vice president are loose approximations of Biden and Harris.
Oh, by the way, the American president is the brother on Better Call Saul. Lovely to see him, right?
Yeah, Charles McGill.
What do you think of the characters? Because I saw this movie, or I saw this show in kind of the previews, the clips that they showed, I thought this was going to be more of a, I think they mispositioned it. I thought this was going to be more of a comedy, kind of like Veep. The few scenes that I saw in the trailer, I thought this was supposed to be funny. And even if you look at the cover art, the way that Kerry Russell is kind of like sitting in a chair, I get the impression this is supposed to be funny.
I'm 100% with you. When I saw the trailer, I thought what we were going to get was a situation where you have like the first husband, right?
Yeah.
Who was an ex-president or an ex-ambassador himself. And that it was going to be the interplay about that. And you do get a lot of that, don't get me wrong, but not in a comic way.
I would first say, I think Netflix has positioned this wrongly. It's not a comedy. There are, of course, some comedic elements, just like West Wing had some things that were funny, but this is not at all intended to be a comedy. So I think that the trailer should be recut because I think the trailer gets it all wrong in terms of my expectations. And if you're expecting a comedy, you're not going to be happy. And if you avoid the show because you want a hard political drama or hard international intrigue drama, you may avoid this when it's actually right down your alley.
So, you know, what's interesting is, as we said, usually we give recommendations to our parents. So as I watched the third episode, I pressed pause and I called up my dad and I said, you should watch this because this is right up your street. It's a political show without being too political. There's good drama. There's good, let's say, suspenseful and thriller-esque beats in there. I will say that there are some elements that I'm not a huge fan of.
Tell me those.
So let's talk about Kerry Russell.
I can't wait to dive into this because I think I'm going to agree with you.
Yeah, I get that you're angry at your husband or your, sorry, spoiler alert, by the way.
Spoiler alert.
I get that you are angry at your husband or your ex-husband to be, or your whatever, it's complicated situation they're in at the moment. But I also understand that you're in the diplomatic corps and you have to be a little bit more polished. I get that your personality is that I'm a no nonsense gruff person. I'm here to get shit done. I'm not here to, take carriage rides and take photo ops. I get that. It makes sense and I like that. But there is still a bare minimum. And there are so many times where she doesn't even meet that bare minimum. By the 7th episode, it kind of gets old to always be like, I'm angry at my husband, rah, rah, rah. Okay, I mean, you're also in a position where you can do something about it, but then you don't. Like, you keep flip-flopping back and forth. Like, I want to use him. I don't want to use him. He's got a wealth of experience, but I don't want to touch it. I don't know. I just got a little frustrated with that, to be honest.
Dude, I'm so happy you said that. I think those are 2 comments. Let me break them down and then let's take them. The first comment is the dynamic is her husband used to be an ambassador and she was kind of like the foreign service employee. And now she's, based on her passion, her experience, her qualifications, she is now the ambassador and he's kind of unemployed. And as you said, he's kind of like the first husband where he doesn't really have anything to do. He's kind of meddling, kind of helping. And there's this like push and pull dynamic where she's like, look, he has a lot of value to offer, but if I get him involved, he's going to get all the way involved and then I'm going to lose control of the situation. I totally get that. What I don't like is this ongoing issue about their marriage being over, not over, for 2 reasons. One, they go out of their way to stress that there's been no infidelity. They go out of their way to say this more than once, right?
Yep.
So okay, you're just not getting along. We get it, understandable. But then I'm with you, like, make up your mind. Like, divorce, don't divorce. But like the way that they push and pull makes it seem like they're just having a strained marriage. I wish they'd get off on that. Or it should have been, he had an affair with my best friend when we were in an embassy. He got fired for it. It broke my trust. One or the other. But I thought it was so strange that they continuously say he's a faithful husband and she's not clear on whether she wants the marriage, not the marriage. I just don't want that family drama in my life. That's issue number 1. The second issue is, which I think you said, I feel that they are really diminishing her as a woman by making her so rough around the edges. I understand her character is that, hey, I'm not this prissy little Barbie. I am a roll up my sleeves, get involved in the technical issues kind of person. I'm not a fancy pants. You know what? That's a character description. What I don't like is, as you mentioned, how I feel like it really diminishes women, where she's like taking kind of like a shower in her office with like the baby wipes, where, she's almost intentionally dirty and smelly, where she has like this violent hatred against dresses or anything nice. I feel like that's just turning her a little bit into a caricature and unnecessary to show that she's just a little bit like rough around the edges and that she's focused on the politics and doesn't enjoy so much the glamour or the perk side of the position. Am I onto something here?
And then to follow up on that, towards the latter half of the season, they introduced this potential love interest / love triangle with the British foreign minister.
And his sister.
Right. Let's break that down. First of all, no foreign minister. I don't care if they're married or they know that they're about to get divorced or whatever. No British foreign minister is going to get involved with the ambassador of another country in their home turf. It's never going to happen. It's not plausible. I don't get it. Like, I could maybe understand, like, there's some attraction and they have like this like torrid one night stand kind of thing. That's a little bit more television drama-y. I can get that. But then you can't position your character as a no-nonsense, gruff, I'm here to get the job done woman who all of a sudden has put herself into this love triangle thing with her
you're
current
so right.
husband
You're
and
so
the
right.
foreign minister with the other nation, not even your own country.
Dude, you are so right. It really undermines. I feel like it. I don't know why. I mean, no one's. I feel like I'm the feminist here. Like you show her as this no nonsense lady, but then she gets in a room with like a handsome British dude, and suddenly she can't control her hormones anymore. It
What happened?
really, I feel like, right? It
Yeah,
super diminishes her.
that last scene where she's forced to put on the red ball gown, I thought that
Yeah,
was played out perfectly in the sense that
that was good.
that was a moment where she's like, all right,
Yeah.
I have to stop being this idiotic tomboy
Yes.
kind of attitude
Yes.
character,
Yes.
and I need to play the game if I really want to
Yes.
get things done.
That's right.
That makes sense because that's kind
Correct.
of character growth to say that, all
Yes.
right, this is part of the job. And
Yeah.
if I want to become vice president, which is, oh, right, we forgot to say, she's also in this position because this is kind of like a job interview, a 6-month long job interview before she gets nominated to become the replacement vice president.
Right.
That's fine. I think that was an excellent moment. But
Yes.
this sequence where the sister of the foreign minister is pointing out that look at the three of them and she's sitting in between, her husband on her right and the foreign minister on the left. Come on.
I know. It was too much.
That's soap opera stuff, and that's fine
Yeah.
if you want to portray the show that way. But for 95% of the show, you've showed her as being like this ultra capable woman. An
Yeah.
ultra capable woman like her would never have put herself in this position.
I agree. I like Carrie Russell's character a lot, but I feel like they just turned the volume up on her character too much, and as a result, they kind of diminished her. And I have to say, I'm half wondering if this was shot as a comedy, and it kind of went to like a testing group, and the testing group panned it and said, "Yeah, actually, it's not at all funny. We don't like this about her. We actually think that she's better as like a straight-laced character." And Netflix said, "Oh, look at the audience feedback. Let's reshoot and let's cut some stuff." And maybe that is an explanation why there's still some remnants of this nonsense stuff in there, because it's absolutely intended to be a technocratic political drama and not intended to be a silly soapy comedy.
And if they wanted to do like some kind of romantic beats, I think they've got it
Yeah.
right with the fact that they've got her chief of staff and the CIA liaison in that kind of quasi relationship they're in. That's the
Yeah.
kind of place where you can do these romance shenanigans because that doesn't distract from the main story.
Yeah.
So that balance, I think they got right. In fact, I really like the chief of staff. I really like the CIA
Oh, man.
station chief. I like the
Yes.
two of the interplay. I thought was fantastic.
Yeah. You know what I wish would be different about the Carrie Russell Rufus Sewell relationship is that I'm really not comfortable with how awkward this is and like how much weird sexual undertone there is as well. Because remember that scene when he's with the British foreign minister, I don't know his title, his sister, like in the lake?
Yep.
That was a super weird scene, right?
I didn't understand because on one hand, he admits that he's trying to save the marriage so that, she can become vice president.
Nothing made sense about that
And then
scene.
on the other hand, he's stripping naked, jumping into this lake with the foreign minister's sister, and then admitting it all to Carrie Russell.
And then kind of like swimming over to her and kissing her. And then he had this weird comment, like it was just almost like an ED commercial where he's like,
Yeah. Like
yeah,
I couldn't get it up with her.
I can't get it up for anyone else except my wife. And then the sister says something like, I don't think that's the case. The whole thing was just super, super awkward and weird, right? And it didn't, not just, which is bad. You should never have a super awkward, weird scene that doesn't add anything to a show. But it seemed to undermine this consistent message that we've been getting, which is Carrie Russell's like, I've got a lot of issues with my husband, but he's not a cheater, not a cheater, not a cheater, not a cheater.
And then she's the one who puts herself in a position where she theoretically could cheat on him, which
Stupid.
Rubbed me the wrong way the whole
I
way.
agree. Even though I love this show, that was something that I thought was totally, it just isn't consistent. But
Yeah.
I think that they should change a little bit the dynamic between Carrie Russell and Sewell. And I think it would be better again if it appeared that they're like this very in sync kind of power couple, but behind the scenes, it's kind of like this loveless, like marriage, and he always kind of wants more. And she's like, yeah, like I only care about the job. I'm not interested in love or romance or anything. And he's kind of like the romantic. I think that would play a little bit better, to their personal characteristics, right?
I would agree, but I think the time for that has now passed. I think I don't
Oh,
want to
it's
see
gone.
more of
I
that
agree.
in season 2.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think that that's something that if you had spent the whole first 8 episodes doing that, and then by the end of
Yeah.
it kind of uniting as a united front, and figuring out the balance that makes it work for the two of them, I think that would have been better. I think that the way they ended season 1, which by the way, kudos, it was one of the better cliffhangers we've seen.
Totally agree.
I think it's rare to find a good cliffhanger for a political drama, let alone a drama in general. West Wing tried a couple times, but they went a little over the top with like the kidnapping and all that kind of stuff.
The Reagan shooting.
Yeah. So again, it was fine. It was serviceable. It made sense for the time. But I think in today's day and age, this was probably one of the better cliffhanger endings. Oh man, like I can't wait for season 2. Although obviously I don't know what's happening with this. You can't help but
it has to be renewed.
Have to continue. Yeah.
You and I both love this show. We both said this is a must subscribe, but we've spent a lot of time talking about what we don't like about it.
Yeah.
Help me verbalize or articulate what makes a show something that we like versus a show that we don't like. What is it about this show?
I think what I really like about this is her hyper competence.
Yeah.
In the sense that she is put into an unenviable situation. She has no desire to be a vice president. She's thrown into this unwillingly, and so she has to make the best of it. And so she does so in her own style. And in every episode, there was some kind of problem that came up or some kind of roadblock. And, this almost felt like, have you ever watched House or any of these like medical or police procedurals where there's some mystery or some problem that they're trying to solve? They don't know how to solve it for 50 minutes of the episode. And then in the last 10 minutes, they're like, aha, we can do this, this, and this. Yeah. It kind of felt like a political procedural in the sense that early doors, some political roadblock is introduced into the episode. We spent 25 minutes trying to figure out a solution for that. She has a fight with her husband. They have some kind of tete-a-tete, and it dawns on her, this is what I can do, or this is what needs to be done. And then we see 5-10 minutes of furious activity that makes it work. And then we see a positive resolution to that. So it's not that in one episode she's solved the entire mystery. But what she's done is in every episode, there's like a micro crisis, and she has to solve each crisis. And I like that because it's not plausible for her to be able to solve the mystery of this terrorist attack, which, by the way, an ambassador is never going to be involved in, right? With all due respect to the diplomatic corps of the United States, no ambassador gets involved in this kind of granular detail when it comes to a terrorist attack. That's what the CIA is for. That's what investigators are for. That's not what ambassadors do.
I have to say, I think you explained it really well. And the distinction, what I see, let's take again West Wing or House of Cards, is that each episode there's a big problem or challenge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, for most of the episode, they're trying to go around the problem. And then, right, it was either Kevin Spacey or the dude who played Jed Bartlett. They would have like this dramatic speech, or they talk to someone who knew someone, and at the snap of the fingers, the problem would be solved. I think why I like this show so much is, as you mentioned, you use the word like micro issues, that the big problem is not solved throughout season 1. It's just continued, but she's kind of attacking it piece by piece, breaking it down into chunks. New pieces may be appearing, or the resolution of one creates another to pop up, but she hasn't actually solved the major problem. each episode is just kind of it's not even really episodic. It's like it's just a series of 12 episodes, but it just happens to be broken down into, like 1 hour chunks of the entire problem solving over the course of this week or 2 week period of time, right?
Exactly.
That's really what this is. It's just kind of 2 weeks of her life attacking this problem and all the different actions that go into that. And we see it 1 hour at a time on Netflix.
Yeah.
So I like that. I think the problem and the way that the problem is attacked and all the different moving pieces, I think that's very, very compelling political drama. And I love the show. I would definitely change the fact that they've made her, I think, a little bit silly in some ways. And the family drama, I think, is entirely unnecessary.
I think going forward in season 2, I imagine they pick up a week later or 2 days later or whatever it is later. And my hope is that the way it ends is used as the impetus for them to not just stay together, but you be a united front.
I imagine.
I mean, I hope, because I gotta say that stupid love triangle bothered me to no end. Like, it wasn't the right place for it.
I mean, I agree. I'm still half convinced that this was originally shot as a comedy, like Elaine Louis Dreyfus. I feel like it was trying to be a little bit Veep, and it fell flat. She's not funny. And they said, wait a second, audience doesn't like this as a comedy. They're not getting behind this. They love her as a serious character. Let's just, re-edit, reshoot, and make her a more serious character. But unfortunately, in some of the cover art and in some of the trailer, it still has the comedic elements, and that's not hitting. And even this dynamic between her and the husband may kind of be a remnant of that as well. And they just weren't able to reshoot everything. That's the justification I'll give them.
And by the way, I think this would have worked equally well as a comedy, but I think they made the right call. A political drama probably has more legs. Comedies tend to die very quickly.
Yeah.
Shows like Veep are rare. Shows like Arrested Development, etc., are rare. Whereas I think, a good political... Look, here we are 10 years after the fact. We still regard House of Cards early seasons as some of the best dramas on television. Yeah. Despite the fact that Kevin Spacey was doing a lot of nonsense at the time.
Indeed. Let me ask you a question about her chief of staff, Stewart, who's a super cool actor.
Yeah, I love him.
And the CIA station head.
Yeah.
Those two are in a romance. What do you think of that? Necessary, not necessary, believable, not believable?
I liked it. I thought it was good. I think it also helps that I liked both of those characters because, again, they're both hyper competent people. Like, he is clearly a competent chief of staff. She is clearly a competent CIA station chief. I enjoyed that dynamic as well. I thought it was quite funny. When he tries to sneak into her apartment and she pulls a gun on him, it was funny without being slapstick funny. I enjoyed that kind of thing. I liked the back and forth between the two of them. I liked that they didn't allow the fact that they were in a relationship to dictate what they can and can't say around each other, in the sense that it's understood, hey, I'm the station chief. I can't tell you about stuff that I can't tell you about, just like he knows about certain things on her schedule that he can't tell her about. And they didn't hold that against each other, or they didn't use the fact that they were in a relationship to kind of use that as like weapons against each other. They both respected their boundaries professionally. Whereas I think a lesser show would have used that as leverage to be like, well, I thought we were sleeping together. I thought you could trust me. Why can't you tell me all this information? I think they're both very much more like, hey, this is what the job is. The job also comes first, but I still want to be in a relationship with you. And we leave it at that.
I take that. And I agree with you that I didn't want this to evolve into, something else. You're right, where there's too much drama. But let me present it in a potentially different way.
Okay.
I like both of those characters, exceptionally so. I think they are very, very critical to the success of the show. I don't think the show would work if neither of those had the personality that they do. But I have two issues. One, I don't feel really any love between those two. I mean, I just haven't seen any like true emotion between them. They have mutual respect, but I haven't seen like any intimacy or anything. Not like physical intimacy. I just don't see anything like chemistry. I would kind of prefer, or I'm just going to throw it out there, that it's one of those things where they both do have an attraction to each other. They're working, very closely to each other. They understand each other's pressures and lifestyles and goals and all those other things that they have common that, make workplace romances so popular. And they've each given each other kind of small favors, which they probably shouldn't have done, because they recognize the challenges. Maybe someone's got going through a divorce, or maybe someone's got like a parent who's in a care center or something, and they've kind of like covered for each other, and they've got this great degree of like loyalty and I've got your back to each other. I would find that more compelling, that we're in the background kind of like rooting for them, but we see the practical problems for them to actually like, take that next step forward into a relationship, right? For me, I think that would be compelling. Like, oh, come on, he's such a great guy. Come on, just say it, This one is, I like both the characters, but I get nothing out of this relationship. They're not warm. I just don't see anything. Do you?
I get that. I'll point out that relationship talk they had. Two things that stood out to me was that scene on the phone where they were just like, I think we should go public. And they were going back and forth about going public in the office. I thought that was very relatable. And in the sense that, and understandable, like, you're the head of the CIA there in the office. You're the chief of staff in the office. Like, how's that going to look? All that kind of thing. And, they were both kind of like, well, I'm happy to do it if you are, that kind of thing. I thought that felt genuine. The discussion about having a dog or getting a baby, I thought that was also quite, endearing, that conversation. I get what you're saying, but I also like that if you did what you're suggesting was this kind of like will they, won't they kind of thing, I think the problem is that, one, it seems a little immature for people who are in their 30s and 40s, who are the head of the CIA and the head of the chief of staff, to be participating in this kind of romantic endeavor, especially as side characters. I think that kind of takes away from the show, because that seems more like a soap opera-esque, romantic comedy-esque maneuver to do. And, the reality also is, like, again, they're mature adults. They're both, again, hyper competent. I think that, if both of them liked each other, I can see both of them just saying, hey, listen, I like you. Let's see where this thing goes, rather than playing it out. I think that if this was a comedy, that's exactly what this thing would have needed, was that will they, won't they? If they had played this as a political comedy versus a political drama, I think then it would have worked much better, what you're suggesting.
What do you think of the casting of this? I think everyone is cast absolutely right.
Yeah.
I don't have anyone to change. Do you?
No, not at all. I thought everyone was great. I really like the White House chief of staff, Billy. She plays Billy in the show. I don't know the actor's name. I really liked her. I really like Rufus Sewell, I gotta say. I like him because you can tell that he is that smarmy but extremely charismatic career politician.
Yeah, I agree. I think that he is perfectly cast for that role. But I have to say, as perfectly cast as he is, it goes back to my point that I think Kerry Russell is a little bit diminished in how rough around the edges she is, because I'm also a little bit hard pressed to naturally see them as a couple. The implication is he has this serious side, and he's attracted that she's kind of pretty, and she's also very dedicated to her job, right? And she is attracted to his brain. But I feel like they make her a little too rough around the edges to really make that a realistic relationship.
For someone who's been married to this guy for 10 years, you'd think she would have picked up some of the tricks of the game, right? Of the political game. She was the ambassador's wife for 10 years. You don't think she understands how the game is played by now?
Yeah.
So for her to turn around and say, well, I don't want to wear a dress, yeah, okay, maybe you don't like to wear a dress, and maybe what you should do is be cheeky enough to have like a pair of jeans on under your ball gown so that you feel comfortable or whatever. I'm being specious, but some
Yeah.
kind of, fine, if I have to do this, I'm going to do it my way, rebel.
Yeah.
That totally makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, you can see her like, hey, she never wears heels, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, what are you wearing? Are those like flats with your ball gown,
Yeah.
right? Or like, you can't wear a pantsuit here. Like, you can make her not fancy without making her like an
The exact
idiot.
opposite. Exactly.
Like she's not stupid. Okay, fine. She doesn't like dresses, but as you said, this is not her first rodeo. She obviously knows what's expected. She did accept the position. She was going to be an ambassador in Afghanistan. Like, she's not exempt from having like, general decorum and stuff,
Exactly.
like showering and, some of this other stuff,
I mean, I don't know what it's like in the US, but I know that, for example, in most other countries, if you want to join the Foreign Office, if you want to be a part of the diplomatic corps, there's a separate training school that you go to where they teach you everything that you need to know in terms of not just cultural for the place you're going to be posted at, but in terms of like, hey, you're an ambassador, you represent this country, this is how you eat salad, this is what the place settings are. They teach you everything so that you maintain a certain level. She most certainly will have done that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he was an ambassador, right? So in theory, I don't think they specify what country though, do they?
They do not. But I mean,
right?
What I like is that they play him off as like this, almost like this clown, but at the same time, when he puts his game face on, he knows exactly who to call. He knows what steps to do. He sees the political playground in front of him, or sorry, the field ahead of him better than anybody else. And he's kind of, he's 3 or 4 chess moves ahead of everybody else, better than anybody else. And I really like that.
I mean, I think there's a better, if we rethink about it a little bit, I think there's a better dynamic in terms of, like, they haven't really gone into his backstory. There's some implication that he made a statement, or he was kind of like relieved of his duty because he said something wrong, right?
Yeah. He committed like political suicide by criticizing the administration very publicly. And that's
so, I mean, I think there's a better backstory where like he's a little bit like down. He's still got a great network, but it's a little bit strained because he's kind of like persona non grata.
Yeah.
And she has to, not only navigate her own new position, but also kind of like compensate for, her husband who's bringing his own like little baggage. I think that's a much stronger, like a strong woman character, and shows the challenges she has. And she's like, hey, like, I'm not really equipped for this. I've always been the technocrat. I'm not the handshaker, charismatic person that can fix all these issues. That was always him. And now I'm having to kind of overcompensate, because he doesn't have the same level of connections, that he used to have. At the same time, I'm trying to kind of like, support him and rehabilitate him a little bit and give him some like, throw him a bone here and there so he can kind of like get back on his feet. I think that's a more compelling storyline than for reasons that are not clear, I'm tired of our marriage, but I do love him. Sometimes we'll sleep together, sometimes we won't. He's faithful, but then he had this weird thing where he's not, and the whole thing is just like, ugh, like from a marriage counseling perspective.
Absolutely.
But we still love the show.
We can both agree this is still a must subscribe. I know we've spent maybe 20 minutes crapping on it a little bit, but it's because, again, the show is,
we love it,
nearly perfect. It's as close to perfect as we're going to get. And having said that, I just also
from Netflix, by the way.
Yeah, that's exactly the comment I was just about to make. We've been famously shitting on Netflix for a long time now, but say what you will, this year we have together watched 4 shows on Netflix. Kaleidoscope, which was close to a must subscribe from both of us. Unstable, which was again close to a must subscribe from both of us. Beef, which was a must subscribe from both of us. The Diplomat, which was a must subscribe from both of us. I mean, they're doing something right. They're hitting on all cylinders as far as I'm concerned.
My complaint about Netflix, I agree with everything you said. My complaint about Netflix is that it seems that for every really thoughtful show that they have, they say, okay, we need 5 more like this. Who's ever out there, just grab a bunch of people from the street, whatever script is at the top of your desk, and let's just make it so that we've got 5 more shows kind of in this vein. And all 5 of those are just rubbish. That's my problem with Netflix.
Yeah, you're right. They have a scattergun approach. They throw money at the problem. I don't know if you read this, but just this week they announced that they're investing $2.5 billion over the next 4 years. Something like that. It's either 10 billion over 4 years or 2.5 billion over 4 years, something like that, in Korea specifically, for content creation in Korea. Now, I like the fact that they're throwing money into a region. The world has become aware of how high quality their programming is, but that is a lot of money. The problem is that when you do this, ultimately, what Netflix is doing is they're increasing the size of the swimming pool. But increasing the size of the swimming pool ultimately means that the water level is going to go down. It doesn't mean that the water level stays high. And so what they're doing is they're saying, hey, we're going to just throw 2.5 billion, 10 billion, 1 billion, 100 billion, whatever that final number is going to be, into South Korea. Well, good for South Korea, because at the end of the day, if you have 10 writers who are excellent or 100 writers who are excellent, you don't become an excellent writer all of a sudden just because you've thrown another $1 billion at the problem. That's not how it works. Content creation, talent, art, it doesn't propagate on the basis of money. It propagates on the basis of quality, and that's it. So you cannot throw money at this problem. You can certainly make things look better, I agree, but that doesn't mean that the show itself is going to be of higher quality. I think that's a lesson that Netflix refuses to learn.
I think there's been a lot of amazing South Korean television.
Yeah.
I don't feel like there's an unmet appetite.
I agree.
I
don't think South Korea was clamoring for $1 billion more dollars because we don't have shows that we can't produce because of that.
Yeah. I'm going to say the word more, but I don't mean more. Let me explain that sentence. What I mean is, if there's already 5 very good Korean shows, I think you should make 5 more good Korean shows. I don't think you should make 5 more and another 10 on top of that. So you have 15 Korean shows.
Right.
I don't think we need more. We just need a continuation of the great quality that you already have.
Yes.
Whatever is your budget, continue that budget. But just because you go 5 times that budget, don't think that you're going to have 5 times more better shows. You probably will not.
I mean, look at Amazon. You buy the rights and spend $800 million on making Lord of the Rings. That doesn't mean you're going to make a series that is 3 times better than all of those movies combined. Art and content creation and whatever you want to call it, media and communications, it doesn't work on a like-for-like basis. You get diminishing returns, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm all for South Korea, but in that case, what I would do instead is I'd try to find a crossover. The Diplomat's a great British-American crossover.
Oh, fantastic.
Why not find an auto manufacturing crossover? Why not find a Samsung-Apple battle crossover? Why not find a North Korea political drama crossover? If those were the 3 topics, kind of do something about like cloning, right? That's a very South Korean thing. Or someone who's like retired baseball star who goes to play in the Korean Baseball League. Like, I feel like there's
that's something I'd watch.
Right?
Ex-Yankees pitcher who's chosen as the pitching coach for, I don't know, some South Korean team. I would 100% be behind that. Fish out of water.
Yeah, I'll tell you the better one, which could have been a true story. There was this dude who played for the Dodgers who was banned for a year, and he went to Japan. Have a dude who was banned from Major League Baseball for a year, and he went to Korea to further his career. It's the only job he could get. Like you said, fish out of water, right? You could either do the aging star, which is the old Magnum PI movie. Remember that, Mr. Baseball?
Yeah, that's right.
Let's do a cool crossover like that. But I don't think we need 5 more Squid Games.
Well, exactly. And you know that's exactly what's going to happen with this. They're going to look at the success of Squid Games and they're going to say, hey, let's create 5 different variations of this and see what sticks.
I just gave 3 good ideas.
Yeah. I agree with you. If South Korea has 5 excellent premises, they maybe have 1 or 2 more in the tank that they don't have funding for. I can believe that. I don't think they have 25 more.
No.
I would much rather say, hey, look, instead of spending $2.5 billion in South Korea, spend an extra $500 million, take that other $2 billion, go to Indonesia, go to Australia, go to Japan, go to the Democratic Republic of Congo, go someplace nobody else is going and find shows there. And I guarantee you all these places I've mentioned have excellent shows.
Okay, that was Stream or Skip Plus. Yeah, I think everyone got their money's worth, which is free.
Daisy Jones and the Six, Mooch, Shantaram, must subscribe. Diplomat, must subscribe.
Must subscribe and fix their marital issues.
Yes, agreed, wholeheartedly.
Pete, always a pleasure. Listeners, thank you. Pete, where should people send their comments?
That's right, Ethan. So the easiest thing you can do, listeners, is you can like this video and leave a comment below this. For those listening on podcasting platforms, tweet at us at F&S Podcast, DM us on Instagram at Films and Stuff Podcast, or email us aloha@filmsandstuffpodcast.com. We most recently did a top 10 ranking of our favorite and maybe most influential Star Wars characters. Maybe you guys have all passed out because that list was so crazy.
No death threats so far.
Which tells me you guys all agree with us and we're bang on. So unless that's the case, let us know. We want to hear.
Pete, thank you for a great episode. Listeners, thank you as well. We'll see you next time. Films and Stuff. Bye now.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.